It's June 21st? Is it? Yeah, it's June 21st, 2025. I'm just crocheting while we do this. It's not even anything interesting. It's just double crochets over and over again. But I'm going to try to explain to you, and I say try, not because it's a difficult, logistically thing, it's difficult because I have ADHD and I keep getting distracted, and also it's hot in here because our air conditioning sucks. I'm going to summarize Witch King, the plot of Witch King for you, because it's a lot of people have been convinced themselves and convinced by Martha Wells' shitty writing that if they read this book and didn't understand what's going on, that it's their fault because it's just too advanced for them. I keep seeing the word convoluted and complicated get thrown around. That actually might even be on this. Yeah. Convoluted, complicated, complex. That's even on here. A wildly original and complex fantasy. And it's like, unlike anything I've ever read, a layered and complex novel. I promise you, it's not complex, it's not convoluted, it's not complicated, it's just badly written. There is a difference that you can have a complex story. This is not that. This is just genuinely, objectively, horribly fucking written. The reason you read this book, if you read this book, and you don't know what the fuck what happened, is because it is horribly written, and nothing was explained to you, and so much absolute bullshit, genuine bullshit, was just thrown at you without anything at all for you to grab onto. That I literally don't blame you if you're confused, because it's just shittily written, and it's not your fault if you don't understand what's going on here. And it doesn't mean you're bad at reading. It doesn't mean that big books, big full-length novels, it doesn't mean that you just can't possibly understand them. You reading this book and being confused, I don't think there's a single way for somebody to read this book and not be confused, because the book contradicts itself over and over again. It is genuinely, objectively bad. So the plot is very fucking simple. It's just loaded down with so much bullshit and badly written shit that it seems more complicated than it is. It is not complicated. Our protagonist, Kai, is an immortal, not even immortal, he's a demon who was brought up from the underworld and put into a human's body. He can now transfer bodies at will and can do so whenever the body he's in currently dies, which is very difficult to accomplish because he gets instantaneous magical healing and all kinds of bullshit powers because he's a Mary Sue. He's the Mary Sue of 2025. He's just badly fucking written. He's completely overpowered. His powers, depending on whatever page you're on, his powers will completely contradict what we were told before, literally just so that he can do whatever is required in the moment, even if that completely contradicts all of the so-called rules we were told before. You can't read this book and try to apply logic to it, because Martha Wells doesn't give a shit about logic. She just wants to... She will violate every single rule she sets up in this book. So the plot is that Kai and his friend Zedi, whose name I may be pronouncing wrong, I could in theory go back on the Libby app and maybe see if they'll let me listen to the sample for the audiobook again. I don't think I could do that while oh, Yarn, why are you tied in a knot? Hold on. I don't think I could do that while I'm recording video, so I'll do that after this. For the record, don't throw away yarn that is tangled into a knot. It's very easy to untangle it. Unlike a Martha Wells book, yarn has to follow physics, the rules of physics and logic. You can always untie a knot. You can always untie a knot, unless it's been Like, if it's just naturally yarn that's just naturally tangled from getting shoved somewhere, don't throw it away. Put on a fucking movie or just an audiobook and just sit there someday and just untangle it. You can do it, because yarn, unlike Martha Wells, follows logic. It follows rules. There's only so many ways you can tie a knot, which means that you can untie a knot. You just have to fucking follow it long enough. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. The plot is that Kai and his friend Zedi have been put into a magical sleep for approximately a year, maybe slightly more, slightly less than a year. Thereabouts a year. They've been put into a magical sleep by somebody that they don't know. They don't know who did this to them. They wake up in a tower in the middle of the ocean, I think, with some bad guys that have shown up and woken them up from their year-long magical sleep, because one of them wants to use magic to enslave Kai's mind to his own so he can steal Kai's power, because Kai is a demon, and I guess you can do that. Not really explained why. Presumably they were also going to do that to Kai's friend Zedi, because Zedi is a witch, and in this story, witch has a capital W. We know they also get enslaved by magic. When you enslave a demon or a witch to be your slave via magic, they're called familiars after that. It's dumb. They're just slaves. I'm not gonna call them familiars. It's just slaves. It's just magical slave. Slave via magic brain control. We don't need a special word for it, but Martha Wells loves the thesaurus. She always has. She thinks that if she just uses words, that means that she's clever. I'm getting distracted. And this video is probably going to be long. I'm trying not to make it long, but it will probably be long. And it's not because the story is complicated. It's because I have ADHD and crocheting is not intensive. Crocheting double crochets over and over again is not enough to keep me on track. So, yeah. He and Zedi wake up from their magical sleep, find themselves in a tower in the middle of the ocean. The bad guys all die before page 6 and 7 are up. The main bad guy, who we were told his name is Menless, he dies on page 7, like halfway through page 7. All of his little minions died before that on page 6 and 5. The bad guys had brought 2 people with them to use. It's not clear because the story is badly written. We were going to use them as sacrifices somehow. Again, it doesn't make sense, and it's not because it's convoluted or complex. It's just badly written. So Kai, the body he was in before, I guess, died during the magical sleep. That's not explained either, because it's just badly written. Even though Zedi was fine from the magical sleep, but we're gonna... Anyways. The bad guys brought 2 prisoners with them. One of them supposedly died, like, the instant he stepped into the room, so Kai possessed him instead. And then their other prisoner is a little girl named Sanja. It might be pronounced Sanya. It's Sanja. I don't know if we're pronouncing that the Sanja, but I'm just going to go with Sanja until further notice, because there's no pronunciation guide. There's not even a table of contents. So now Kai, the demon, Zedi the witch, and Sanja, the little girl who had been held captive by the bad guys, who were supposedly planning to put Kai, the demon, in her body and then enslave her with magic with Kai in her body. It was weird. It doesn't make sense because it's badly written. So then they're like, well, we killed all those bad guys, let's get out of here. And then they walk up a long flight of stairs to the top of this tower, and then realize that they're in the middle, on a tower in the middle of the ocean, and that the bad guys got here not by boat for some reason, and it's because it's badly written. They got to this tower in the middle of the ocean by using a whale that they had enslaved via magic and attached a giant conch shell to its back. It might have been a nautilus shell. I think that's the one that just goes in just like a big snail shell. Where's my markers? It was, I think it was a nautilus shell. So it's just the one that just genuinely goes like this, and then you got like a little squid coming out of it or something. I don't know. So it's a whale that has one of these things attached to its back for some reason. Why? Because it sounded cool to Martha Wells, and there was nobody to stop her. And this whale is enslaved. We get the word enslaved used because it's got this thing tied on it with a harness, and supposedly that stops it from diving or something. I don't know. It's badly written, but it's badly written. It's badly written. If there's anything you take away from this video, it's that this book is badly written, okay? And if you were confused by it, it's not because you're bad at reading. It's because this book is legitimately, objectively, badly fucking written, okay? I'm serious. I'm serious. Very serious. If you struggle to understand this book, it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's because the book is bad and doesn't make sense. So, the three characters, demon, witch, and kid that the bad guys brought with them, have climbed up the stairs to the top of this tower, seen that they are in the middle of nowhere, and that the bad guys got here not via boat, like normal people. They enslaved a whale and tied a giant nautilus shell to the back of its back, and then they just hang out in the shell while it's going and doing stuff. This is no, I won't get into it. I gotta say, it's just ridiculous. And then the whale is enslaved, and Kai, the demon guy, says, hey, if you take us to some volcanic islands, and then some other place, I'll free you. Instead of just freeing the fucking enslaved, instead of it freeing the enslaved whale that you can talk to telepathically because it's sentient, instead of just freeing the whale immediately and then asking if it can bring them to these places, they say, you have to bring us there, and then we'll free you. So we're already off to a bad fucking start for these characters actually being heroic in any way. You can have, they're not anti-heroes. They're not anti-heroes. They're just presented as always right all the time. And some people are like, oh, it's morally gray. But keeping people as slaves, yes, including a sentient whale, that's keeping people as slaves is not morally gray, that's just evil. So they get on the whale, and then we have nothing happen. They just go to some volcanic islands. I guess they're active volcanoes forming in the middle of forming islands nearby. And then Kai goes there, and then Kai meditates because something about the volcanoes means that he can send his mind back into the underworld and visit his mom and grandmother and have a chat, and that is literally not important at all. And we like never see those characters again in the present timeline, and it genuinely should not have happened. So they wake up, summarize, they wake up in the tower, kill the bad guys, climb up to the top of the tower, get on the whale. Oh, there actually might be a map. I cannot mess up this. Stitch. Gosh. I think there's a map in here. Shitty map. Oh, yeah, dumb. It's so dumb. So, they wake up here in that little black thing. That's the tower. And then they ride the whale, whale who is a slave, here. And then this is like a volcanic thingamajiggy. And then when they get there, Kai just meditates and goes to chat with his mom and grandma. And it's stupid and unimportant and shouldn't have been put in the final draft. And then some other people show up on a boat. And we're told that the people who made this boat, they're called the Immortal Blessed / Immortal Marshals. And we're told that their boats are sacred to them. And they don't allow anybody who's not immortal, aka just mortals, they don't let mortals on their boats and shit. But we're told that this boat was stolen by a bunch of mortals, mainly the bad guys, who are still mortals, and not supposed to have this boat. We get told multiple times that the Immortal Blessed will have to kill any mortals that they find on this boat to, I just forgot the word, consecrate, re-sanctify the boat, because it's a sacred boat that only immortal people are allowed on. So if mortals are on it, touching it with their grubby mortal hands, it needs to be purified, is the word I'm looking for. So the fastest way to purify the boat would be to kill any mortals, and they'd also want to punish any mortals for desecrating their sacred boat. But anyways, the protagonists steal the boat, kill the bad guys aboard, so the boat's now double stolen. And then they sail from, oh, would help if I could show you the map. Okay. They sail from here to over here, where we're told it's an empty city, but it's not actually empty because there's people living there. And then they go up one of these rivers, and we really don't see any of this at all. And then they go here to this place called the Summer Halls, and they do a bunch of shit there, and then they go over here to a place called the Kagala, which doesn't appear in the story until we're told it exists. And then the story ends. And along that way, legitimately, we're told, okay, when they wake up in the tomb, we get told that Kai and Zedi have what I am calling heart walkie-talkies. They have little magical, Zedi has a magical pearl of blood in her heart that was made from a drop of Kai's blood that she swallowed, and this means that they get to have little telepathic conversations in their head whenever they want. And then Zedi has a wife named Taren who also has one of these pearls. I'm not entirely sure how it works. That lets her and Zedi talk. I don't know if it's a pearl made of Zedi's blood or what. But Zedi can't contact her wife through the magical heart walkie-talkie, so they know that they find out that they've been asleep for a year, and they're really concerned about all their family members and stuff, because, like, what the fuck happened? We got kidnapped and put into magical sleep for a year. What, is everybody else okay? And so that's why Kai went to the volcanoes to meditate, so he could go to the underworld and then ask somebody there to magically scry the house where Zedi lives to make sure everybody's okay. It's just a really convoluted thing for no reason. It's literally not complicated. It's it's overcomplicated because of bad writing. They go to these volcanic islands so that Kai can meditate, so that he can go send his mind to the underworld, so he can ask somebody in the underworld if they can scry to check on their house to make sure everybody's okay. So they do that. Everybody else at their house is okay. They also have not seen Ta-Ren, Zidi's wife, for the same amount of time that these two have been missing. Everybody's just kind of confused about where they went. Not really, like, acting like they've been missing. It's weird and it's badly written. So then the boat of the boat stolen from the immortal people shows up. The heroes of the story steal that from the bad guys by killing the bad guys, and then they just sail to a city and then make another boat when they get there by just doing a magic on a rotten boat and make a ghost boat, and then they sail that ghost boat up the river. And some of this could sound like it could be a really interesting story, but I promise you it's not. It's a waste of page. None of this is explored. It's horribly fucking written. Then they go to a place called the Summer Halls by just sailing. So what they've done so far: woke up in a tower in the middle of the ocean. Go to this place. Go to this volcanic island chain. I forget what you call it. It's just a volcanic island. It's a bunch of volcanoes in the middle of the ocean. They go there. They see another boat there, so they're like, okay, we can just let this whale go now that we don't need it. We'll just get rid of the slaves now that we don't need it. Couldn't have just freed it to begin with and then asked nicely. Steal their boat, and then go to the city, and then just go up the river to this place. And then they spend a bunch of time doing stuff underwater that was completely unnecessarily and badly written. And then they fight the bad guys there, and then they they got a new quest marker over at that place that didn't exist until it was brought up in the story, called the Kagala. And then they just go there and then beat the bad guys there, and then free Zidi's wife Ta-Ren from a magical thingy, from a magical thing that makes you be unconscious. It's just another magical sleep thing, by just opening the door, and then the story ends, and that's it. That's the plot of the current timeline. The past timeline, which was like every second chapter or something like that. It wasn't every other chapter, but the past timeline is that Kai, as a baby demon kid, was brought up from the underworld and put into the body of a child who had died on the surface, explicitly for the purpose of being used in a pedophilic eugenics program. Because once you put a demon in a body, that body won't age, but Kai, as a child, and the body in the body of the child, was still expected to produce babies for these people because he was put into a female child's body. So Kai, as a child, it was expected to get pregnant from some fucking person and make babies for them. And you're thinking, wow, that's fucking horrifying. And yes, it is horrifying. Unfortunately, Martha Wells is a fucking creep and is really obsessed with eugenics and pedophilia. So all of this was treated as perfectly normal and fine, and we are both explicitly and implicitly told that if we think eugenics and pedophilia are fucked up, that means we're racist, because Martha Wells, the author, is a white woman, but she said that the characters who are doing this thing that she wants us to be fine with, she went out of her way to make them Native American coded, which means they're not actual Native Americans, they're fantasy Native Americans. but she's given them a bunch of key hallmark stereotypes of Native Americans to. That's what coding means when we're referring to fiction and not computer coding. Coding is when you say, okay, there's some aliens from Jupiter called the Sneaselsnarf. They have all black skin, and and they're cannibals, and they have bullet-shaped heads, and wear loincloths. This is I'm exaggerating a tiny bit, but this is what a lot of science fiction from the 1930s is. So these aliens, despite being what did I say? Jupiter? I don't fucking remember what we call aliens from Jupiter. Despite these being aliens in the universe, aliens from the planet Jupiter, they're not black humans, but they are racist caricatures of black people, so they are black coded because they are caricatures that racist people see black people as. This is legitimately, there's so much fucking racist sci-fi where they just sometimes even literally just make the aliens just caricatures of black people, black and brown people, because a lot of authors are just fucking racist. Yeah, so Martha Wells, the white woman who wants you to think that pedophilia and eugenics are totally normal and fine, to try and insist to you that pedophilia and eugenics are good, she's hoping that the people reading this book are not racist and don't want to seem racist. So that's why she made the adult characters doing the pedophilia, she made them Native American coded, so that if you have a problem with it, that means that you hate Native Americans. That's legitimately the logic that she is going with, and she wants to try and trap you with. Because she then kills off all of these Native American coded characters with a genocide, and tells us that the propaganda used to incite the genocide was people saying that they were sacrificing their children to get demon slaves. And it's like, yeah, they literally were. The propaganda in universe for indigenous people being genocided is literally true, because Martha Wells is racist on so many levels and is explicitly telling us, implicitly and explicitly, if you think pedophilia is bad, that just means you're racist, because you're siding with the people in this story who committed genocide. So Kai wakes up. We start this story of the past timeline, which is in a few alternating random chapters that don't get chapter numbers like the rest. 3 years after he wakes up, and he still has to wait another year before he's allowed to start joining in on the pedophilic eugenics program, and we get the quote, no, I'm getting off topic. I'm just supposed to be summarizing it, not getting into all the bullshit. It's just portraying pedophilia as totally normal and fine, and it's portraying fucking eugenics and forced breeding programs, and we're just supposed to be fine with it because Martha Wells is a fucking creep. And this isn't the first time she's done this. I do have to say that every single time, because I'm aware, apparently, I am one of very few people who's read most of her books, so most other people are just going off of whatever is directly in front of them, but she's been doing this shit for decades now. She wants you to be okay with pedophilia in her fantasy stories. So Kai has been in this body for 3 years. Nothing much happens besides he and one of his cousins are both still kids, so they make the mistake of thinking it's totally cool to try crossing a river that has been flooded by a storm. That's obviously a terrible idea. His cousin dies. And then that's the end of that. The first little chapter of the past timeline that we get. And then we just skip really far forward with no warning for the next one. So it's just like during a battle between these people and the big bad guys. And then the big bad guys use the magical equivalent of a nuclear bomb to kill all of the Native American people and most of the demons there as well, except for Kai, who manages to survive in some way that doesn't really make sense, and also some horses and like a few other people manage to survive. We're not really given any justification or reasons for why they could survive. There's just no logic to it. It's simply because he's the protagonist. Like, I could understand if he'd fallen into a well or something and it was just deep enough not to get hit by the blast wave, but there's no logic to be found in this story at all. So then that chapter ends with all of the indigenous people dead because of a magical nuclear bomb. And then the next time we go into the past, Kai is being held prisoner in the summer halls and gets rescued by the good guys, and then they kill the bad guys, and then they Kai accidentally messes up a magic spell that makes the place flood by accident, so all the good guys have to run out of the summer halls, and then they go to another town and they kill the bad guys there, and then the story ends for the past timeline. It's literally not complicated in any way. And you can summarize a lot of stories by just summarizing the basic shit of what happens, and then they could still be complicated stories even beyond the basic summary, but like, it's legitimately not. The only reason that this story seems convoluted and complex is that there's no world building done. Martha Wells simply just keeps throwing names at you as though this is the fourth book in a series instead of what was marketed as a standalone and is the first book in the series. She just keeps throwing, like, I'm gonna have to go through it again and write down every name that we get told, and then I'll make a list of how many of those characters actually matter to the story, because she's constantly just dumping the most useless information on you. It's not even information. She's just throwing names at you as though you already know the characters. It's like, oh yeah, you know Bob, you know Greta, you know Sneasel Snorf, you know just it's just ridiculous. Just keeps talking about events as though the best summary for this book is that it's like you're trying to read the fourth book in a series without having read the first three books. Except not even that can do the bad writing in here justice, because if you legitimately pick up the fourth book in a series, the start of that book will, if it's actually well written, come with a very simple reminder of what came before now, so that you don't have to reread those first three books before coming to this one, because that's just how good writing works. That's how basic writing works. So, like, I would literally have rather picked up the fourth book in an unrelated series and read that. That would make more sense than this shit. This is just badly written. There is no world building except for 2 seconds that then gets interrupted. Reading the reviews for this book has enlightened me to the fact that so many people do not know what world building is. They think that if you say dragons exist in this world, they think that's world building. So people are complaining that there's too much world building in this book because they don't actually know what world building is. This book does not have too much world building. This book has practically no world building, and that's the problem. Because world building is not just saying, oh, there's dragons in this universe. World building is getting to see those dragons and understand how they fit into the setting and what they do and how they work. That's world building. There is no world building in this book, which is why it is so fucking hard to understand, because she's constantly throwing shit at you without any explanations. because she is treating this like it's a fan fiction or the fourth book in a series. And I say fan fiction because when you're reading fan fiction, the assumption on the author's part is that anybody who's going to be reading this has already read the source material. If you read Star Trek fan fiction, they're not going to explain to you who the Klingons are or who Jim Kirk is or all that shit, because the assumption is that you've watched the show, which is why you're here in the first place. So Martha Wells is writing this thing that's getting advertised as a standalone, was getting advertised as a standalone novel, but now it's getting a fucking sequel announced already. So it's like, okay, so you were just lying about it being standalone? And it's just constantly dumping useless names and events and the worst descriptions I have ever seen in a book on you. That's another thing that people complain about. They complain about there being too many descriptions. But that's not the problem. The problem is not that there's too many descriptions. It's that the descriptions are fucking meaningless. We get a whole lot of words, and then they paint nothing. The point of a description is to paint a picture for your reader to picture. Here's a description for you. A small tortoiseshell cat is curled up on top of the shelf. She has... Thank you. She has pale green eyes and a little patch of dull orange directly over her chin, which makes her look adorable. Tortoiseshell cats is like a calico, but it's mostly very dark brown and black, all just mixed together. There's not very many stark patches of orange. Another cat, a large silvery gray tabby with a belly that is somehow tinted orange, and he's super big, super sleepy. He's got light yellow eyes. Those are descriptions. Now, another cat, another description. I'll just describe some of our cats. She's black and white, and she's mostly white with some black patches, big green eyes, and then we got like so many tuxedos. Tuxedos cats, mostly all of them almost identical, mostly black with white paws and a white splotch on their face. The only noticeable differences for strangers is that some of them have fluffy fur, some of them have sleek fur, and there are subtle differences on the white stripe on their face. The one male is lacking the stripe on his nose that the rest of them have, and instead he just has a little white notch kind of under his... He's got like almost a little sideways mustache just on one side. They're all asleep right now, so I'm not going to wake them up to show you. Alright, those are descriptions of cats. I'll even just make up yet another description of a cat, of a delightful one I saw on iNaturalist. It is a white cat with Siamese pointing, but instead of instead of a dark brown or black face, paws, and tail, it's striped on its face, its tail, its paws, with very pale pastel orange. I didn't even know that was possible, but you can go look at that cat. Just go to iNaturalist, set photos to domestic cat, set the location to everywhere, and search for public domain photos, which is copyright CC0. You might be able to find it, hopefully. There's not very many public domain photos of cats. You can scroll through it, you'll see it. Those are descriptions of cats. That shows you what the cat actually looks like. If there were a cat in this book, it would be described as the cat had fur and pointy ears. That's it. Not even joking. We get some creatures in this thing that are called wall walkers, and they're not called wall walkers because they climb on walls or anything. There's no logic behind their name. It's just seemingly because that sounds cool, but then they literally never walk on any walls. They are described, let me see if I can find the page again. Probably not. They were described as like having I know they're like 4 tall men tall, so they're big. They're big. They're like, if we say a tall person is like 6 feet, like they're like 24 feet tall, maybe 30 feet tall. They're just big. We know that they are tall. I'm not gonna find the description because there's no table of contents, so I can't even just look. We know they're tall. We get told they're tall, like 20 to 30 feet tall. We're told they have shaggy fur, and they've got some claws on their feet, and that's legitimately it. That's the description we get of these wall walkers, and they're called wall walker with one word, lowercase. Wall walker, as though they walk on walls. We never see them walk on a wall. We're not told anything else about their morphology to indicate that they could even walk on a wall. Like, we were told wall walkers a bunch of times before we got a description, so I'm like, okay, are they giant geckos or something? And then you just and then you, like, put the saddle on them sideways so that you're upright while they're walking on walls? Like, that would have to be employed in very specific situations, otherwise it would be fucking useless most of the time. Unless you had a fucking saddle on a gyroscope or something so that you're always facing upwards. But then we just get the description of they're really tall, they have shaggy fur, and they've got some claws on their feet. I don't even know if we get told what color their shaggy fur is. That's all the description we get. And again, there's no explanation for why they're called wall walkers. We get one description of a town of the houses were mostly 1 and 2 story wooden buildings, painted in sun-faded colors. There was a central plaza or something like that, and it's like, so the houses were painted in colors, and it's like, all right, so we don't know anything about this town besides there's houses that are 1 and 2 story, and they're totally painted in colors. What colors? No fucking clue. They're just sun faded colors. So there's nothing actually there to tell you what any of this shit looks like besides it exists. The cat had pointy ears and fur. Like, to do the, I think it's a Batman meme, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? We could have said warm colors. We could have said colors that had once been vibrant, reds, blacks, and golds, but had been faded by the sun. Something. No, it's just literally sun-faded colors. The houses were painted in colors. What colors? Fuck if I know. She didn't tell us. And then there's a bunch of scenes where she's supposed to be describing nature, and she'll just say things like, the one that caught my eye, because I had literally just been looking at flowers growing out of the sidewalk earlier. I'll get into that. We're told that this place was overgrown with flowers growing out of cracks in the paving. And it's like, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? We're like legitimately just flowers growing out of the cracks. What kind of flowers? We don't even get told what color they are, let alone what size they are, let alone anything else about them. Let me tell you now about some flowers you can find growing out of the cracks in the sidewalk here. You can find creeping indigo, which is called creeping indigo because it creeps along the ground. It's just very short. It just stretches very slowly across the ground. It grows out of the cracks in sidewalks and paving here. It has little round leaves, kind of like clover, because they are distantly related. They're cousins. Maybe like cousins 3 times removed. I don't know how family ties work. They're related. They're both legumes. Faboideae or something like that. I just call them all beans, even though beans is not technically the correct term. They're beans. They're beans, peas. Same fucking difference. Creeping indigo has little round, medium green leaves. They're pretty vibrant. They're very small, like my pinky nail. And that's how big the leaves are. They grow on tiny little stalks that hug the ground, hence the name creeping indigo. And then it has very cool reddish pink flowers. If you've ever seen a bean flower, they're like that. Or even if you've ever looked very closely at a clover flower, they got the same little thing. Clovers just have a bunch of them in a circle. So they are little mats of green that will just very, very, very slowly spread out across the sidewalk from whatever crack they first found some dirt to grow in. They've got very nice, vibrant, tiny little leaves and very nice reddish pink, tiny little flowers. I'm failing and going through the dang thing. Another flower you can find here growing out of the sidewalk is a type of purslane. I don't know the name. It's a little tiny succulent. The leaves are even, like, you could probably fit like 5 of them on my pinky nail. They're so small. But the leaves are bronze. They are dark bronze, reddish brown. Very few. Sometimes you can see little green specks on them, but the leaves are just minuscule, very dark, very, very dark. Some of them even appear black. And then they have this tiniest, most adorable little bright, solid yellow flowers. So let's see, what else have I found growing out of the sidewalk? There's a thing, I don't know if it had flowers, but it's just like a little thing with, do you see this yarn here? The little stems on this thing, you could probably fit 5 of them in the length of this yarn. Like, it's just a thread, like that thread I pulled off my shirt. This is how big the stems on this tiny little plant are. And then the leaves are just little itty bitty circles, like attached to that. And it was called something very fitting for finding it growing out of the literal parking lot, but I forget what it was. Something like pavement, something. Literally named for the fact that it can grow out of the fucking sidewalk. And then there's, of course, beggar ticks, white beggar ticks, Biden's alba, which grows, it's related to mint very distantly. It grows like nice green leaves that grow in pairs of 3 to 5. Serrated edges, and then little white flowers. Maybe the center of the flower would be my thumb, and then you can just, like, to my knuckle there, in a little circle of 5 bright white petals with a yellow to orange center. They're very pretty. Butterflies love them. See all of those descriptions I just gave you of flowers growing out of the sidewalk? See how different they all are? And that's not even including the one time I saw an entire elderberry growing out of a crack in a sidewalk next to somebody's house from the car. That was fucking delightful. Elderberries, their stems can get like this thick. They'll be silvery stems to light brown. They are covered in little bumps on the stem that are called lenticels. That's actually how it breathes, because trees breathe like everybody else, but they don't have lungs. They breathe through lenticels. The leaves they're serrated in groups of 5 or more. They're compound leaves, which means they got a stem, and then there's leaves coming out. There's little mini leaves growing out from this, but it's all actually one leaf. And they have big old giant flowers, giant clusters of flowers that are pure white, that they appear, like if my hand is the stem, then the flower is my hand, and it just opens in a little umbrella of tiny little white flowers. And then they open from the center. They got flower buds in the center, and then they open into flowers. Or maybe I got that backwards. I cannot remember. And then they form into blackberries. You can also just find nightshades growing out of the sidewalk. All of these are flowers that can grow out of a sidewalk, and I have just described some of them to you. And then Martha Wells will just say there's flowers growing out of the sidewalk. What kind of flowers? Doesn't even tell us what color flowers, doesn't tell us what size of flowers, doesn't describe the plant at all. And then she just described the animals as being tall and having fur, having some claws on their feet. The houses were painted in colors. And this is how all of the fucking descriptions go. We're constantly getting too many descriptions of, like, somebody's wearing a tabard and a tunic and a thingy and a blah blah blah, but it's not, like, none of it's being described in a meaningful way that actually conveys literally any information. It's legitimately just so many fucking words but not saying anything. I could tell you I am wearing a t-shirt and shorts. I could tell you I'm wearing a t-shirt and shorts and fancy shoes and jewelry in my hair. But, like, what does that mean? Because you kind of left out some of the very important details, like, what color shirt am I wearing? What color are my shoes? What color are my shorts? What kind of jewelry am I wearing? I am wearing blue shorts. And I'm wearing a shirt that has a fucking butterfly on it that has flowers in its wings. And it's like, I'm not actually wearing shoes. But, yeah. It's like she's just saying so much shit and is telling you that she's describing things, but she's not actually describing things in a way that you can picture because she's leaving out almost all of the important details. Like, yeah, there's houses, sure are painted in colors. What colors? Because and the cat had fur and pointed ears, and it's like, all right, what did the cat look like though? Well, it had fur and pointed ears. That doesn't tell us what the cat looks like. All of our cats have fur and pointed ears. We don't have any furless cats. If I tell you, hold on, what is even going on here? Look at this. The string, the tail of the string has somehow gotten through this. This is some weird, all right, sure, that was weird. If I gave you a fetch quest, just pretend, go get Alex. Go get Kariz, our cat Kariz. He's one of the ones I've already described to you. Go bring me Kariz. And you ask me, okay, so what does Kariz look like? And I tell you, he's got fur and pointed ears. That doesn't tell you anything. That does not tell you anything. How are you supposed to tell him apart from any of the other cats? And I just go, yeah, he's got fur and pointed ears. You can't miss him. He's got fur and pointed ears. And then you get here and all of the cats have fur and pointed ears. So it's like, all right, that's a completely meaningless description. It's not even a description at all. It's just a waste of fucking time. That's what all of the descriptions are in this book. They are a waste of fucking time. She'll tell us, oh, character was wearing a split skirt. And we don't even know what that means. What does a split skirt mean? Like, there's so many things that could describe, and she's not narrowing it down at all. Let me try when I get to that end of that stitch. Let me see. Oh, yeah, I flipped to page 4. She was small, dressed in a ragged, filthy shirt and pants cropped at the knee. What color pants? I'm trying to find the one where they get a bunch of more clothes. I'm trying to find the thing where they just are all putting on a bunch of clothes. It's too. There's no table of contents, so I can't even find what page a certain chapter starts on to look there. But all of the descriptions of clothes are like that. Like me telling you, yeah, the cat has fur and pointed ears. The houses were painted in colors. The animal had fur and was tall. All of the descriptions of clothing are like that, and there's a lot of these so-called descriptions. I think we need I feel like we should just come up with a term for this. It's like an anti-description. I'm just calling them that from now on. These anti-descriptions. We get so many anti-descriptions of clothing, and none of it can mean anything because we're just leaving out the most important things to let you visualize it. We're told he put on a skirt and a tabard and a tunic and leggings and all of this other shit, and we get these anti-descriptions like 20 fucking times. But none of it can mean anything because we're just missing the most basic fucking thing of like, what color is this? What hold on. We don't know what color it is. So, like, the character is wearing a dress. What kind of dress? What color dress? Basic details that are fucking crucial to have an actual description that we can picture is being left out. So, almost every single description we get in this book is not a description, it's an anti-description. It's just a whole bunch of words being vomited onto the page, and none of them mean anything. And it's like that the whole fucking way through, so that you go through the whole book with no idea what anything is supposed to actually fucking look like, what kind of clothes anybody's actually wearing. It's almost fucking impossible to picture any of these things. Especially because once we get told, we never get another reminder. Like, we're told the character's skin colors when they first show up, and then it just never comes up again, even though we're getting like a million names and shit thrown at us. It's just completely fucking ridiculous. So, and yeah, the plot is genuinely not that fucking complicated. It's just made to seem complicated because Martha Wells is confusing people on purpose by throwing so many fucking names at us, bombarding us with anti-descriptions, bombarding us with references to things that happened in the past that we don't actually see, as though this is the fourth book in a series and you have been expected to have read the first 3 books. Or as though it's fucking fan fiction and like we all came here from watching the same movie, right? Except, no, because this is original fiction. It was marketed as standalone. Not even that anymore because they announced a fucking sequel already, which is just absurdity. So it's like, so you were lying about it being standalone because you planned a sequel this entire time. Because there's very obvious bait for a sequel at the end that just comes out of nowhere and is ridiculous. But, yeah. Okay, I'll try to make another video that's even shorter to just summarize the actual fucking plot. Because so many people do not finish this book because it's so fucking terrible and gives you no reasons to care about the characters, and it never explains itself. It's just horribly fucking written. So, the basic summary is, you didn't not understand what happened in this book because you're bad at reading. It's because Martha Wells is objectively bad at writing. So, yep, that's it. Bye-bye.